Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Ever feel like those headlines we read? They only give us like half the story.
Yeah.
Well, today we are going deep on international alliances,
Okay.
specifically NATO,
All right.
and unpacking why some experts believe that, get this, Canada
Really?
might be a bigger challenge for the alliance than, say, a comeback from Donald Trump.
Huh.
Get ready for some surprising stats and perspectives that you probably haven't heard before.
Sounds juicy.
Oh,
It's easy to think that just being like a card-carrying member of NATO is like enough.
right.
But
Right.
like at its core,
Yeah.
this alliance is about, shared defense.
Uh-huh.
And that requires like serious investment. Today, we're not just looking at the numbers behind Canada's spending,
Okay.
but also what it means for like global security.
All right, so let's unpack this. Our main source for this deep dive is an opinion piece, and the title is a doozy. It's called Trudeau Not Trump is the Greatest Threat to NATO. Old statement, right?
Yeah.
It argues that Canada's commitment to NATO is, well, shaky at best. And it points the finger directly at Trudeau. The crux of their argument hinges on what's called the 2% rule.
Right, the 2% rule. So this takes us back to 2014, to the Wales Summit. All NATO members, Canada included, basically shook hands and agreed to spend at least 2% of their GDP on defense.
Okay.
It was meant to strengthen NATO's, collective defense, everyone pulling their weight, so to speak.
Right. But this article does not hold back. It highlights that Canada is falling short, and I mean way short.
Wow.
It ranks 27th out of 32 NATO countries in defense spending.
Ouch.
What's more, even newcomers like Finland and Sweden are already hitting or exceeding that 2% target.
Wow.
Talk about awkward family reunions, huh?
Yeah, you don't want to be that cousin at Thanksgiving, right?
Right.
It makes you wonder, like, if the newer members are stepping up, why is Canada a founding member? Like, why are they lagging behind?
Yeah. And it's not even like their spending is stagnant.
Right.
It's actually been dropping.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. In 2022, it hit a low of 1.24% of GDP. Now, they're aiming to reach 1.76% by 2029.
Okay.
But even that misses the 2% mark.
Right.
And projections suggest they'll only hit 1.42% by the decade's end.
Wow.
So what does this actually mean for folks at home? Well, the article uses Trudeau's decision on the F-35 fighter jet program as a prime example.
Okay.
Remember back in 2015 when he publicly opposed joining the program, promising a more affordable option?
Yeah, I remember that.
And
as the article points out, those promised investments never really materialized.
right.
So almost a decade later, the Canadian military is kind of in a tough spot. They have to play catch up after watching their allies join the program.
Right.
And it's not just about planes, though.
Exactly. It's bigger than that.
It is, yeah. The F-35 program, it's about, collaboration, pooling resources, sharing technology. Canada's late entry potentially weakens that network.
Yeah.
And we're talking about collective defense here.
Yeah.
A strong network. That's crucial.
So we've got Canada behind on spending. They're not meeting their NATO promises. And now they're facing criticism for, dragging their feet on this whole F-35 program.
Right.
It's not like a great look, is it?
No, not really. It makes you wonder what's going on over there.
And then the article throws this curveball.
What?
It claims that during Trump's presidency, the number of NATO members meeting that 2% target actually tripled.
Whoa.
Now, that's what I call a plot twist.
Seriously, Trump tripled the number. That's not what you usually hear.
I know, right? It's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Like, it really challenges, everything we think we know, right?
It does.
So how does the article explain that?
Well, it argues that Trump's, let's say his blunt style,
Right.
however controversial, it might have actually been the push some NATO members needed to increase their defense budgets. Yeah, so by the end of his term, 9 nations were meeting that 2% target.
Okay.
Up from just 3 when that Wales agreement was signed.
Wow. Okay, so a totally different perspective on Trump's legacy with NATO than what we usually hear.
All right.
It seems like the article is really drawing a contrast here between, his approach and Trudeau's.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what's the takeaway?
Well, they're arguing that Trump, despite ruffling some feathers,
Yeah, he was known for that.
ultimately made NATO stronger by pushing for those financial commitments.
Okay.
And in contrast, it suggests that Canada, under Trudeau, has become,
Complacent?
Yeah, complacent, even benefiting from its proximity to the U.S. for security.
Right.
Which is a pretty provocative argument, I think.
It is, and they don't shy away from that point about Canada either, saying that, and I quote, "If every nation followed their lead, NATO wouldn't exist."
Wow.
That's a bold statement.
It is.
Like, are they serious with that?
Well, I think it underscores the whole idea of shared responsibility in these alliances like NATO.
Right.
Like the strength of collective defense, it rests on everyone contributing to the common good.
Right. Everyone's got to pull their weight.
Exactly.
Which makes Canada's, lack of investment even more puzzling.
Yeah.
Especially with all of these escalating global security concerns that are popping up everywhere you look.
Right. And the article specifically mentions the rising tensions in the Arctic, the Indo-Pacific, even emerging threats in cyberspace.
Yeah, it seems like every day there's something new to worry about.
Right.
And these all directly impact Canada's security interests.
They do, yeah.
Yet here they are not really, stepping up to the plate.
Right. And it's like,
almost seems like they're getting a little too comfortable just relying on others.
It begs the question, if not now, when?
Right.
And it's not even just about these, geopolitical chess games,
Yeah.
This has real-world consequences. Military readiness, equipment, even, the lives of service members are at stake.
It makes you really think about what it actually means to be a reliable ally on the world stage.
Definitely.
Is it enough to just, be part of the club?
Yeah.
Or does it require a deeper level of commitment?
Right.
Does it come down to, putting your money where your mouth is?
I think that's the heart of the matter here, yeah.
Yeah.
And the article seems to suggest that if Trudeau's approach was, widespread, it would completely undermine NATO's foundation.
Wow.
It argues that he's been more focused on domestic politics than, fulfilling Canada's global obligations.
So we've gone from Canada's defense spending to Trump's impact on NATO, and now to the very core of what it means to be in an international alliance.
Right.
This deep dive is full of surprises.
Definitely keeps you on your toes.
But before we wrap up, I'm kind of curious about this idea that's been floating around, about Canada relying too heavily on the U.S. for its security. What are the implications of that? Is that really a thing?
Yeah, it's a critical point. And the article implies that Canada benefits from, a sort of security umbrella provided by the U.S., right? Being, geographically close to a superpower like that, it does offer, a certain level of, inherent protection.
Right.
Whether they asked for it or not.
So does that create a free rider problem, within NATO? Where some countries are contributing less because they just, I don't know, they assume that others will just pick up the slack?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
It's kind of like being the friend who never offers to pay for gas even though they're always in your car.
Yeah. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it gets to the heart of the issue here, right? It's complex, no easy answers.
Right.
But it definitely raises questions about, fairness and burden sharing.
Yeah.
If a country, consistently invests less in its own defense, it can be seen as relying a bit too heavily on its allies, and that can cause friction in any relationship, even between countries.
And the article suggests that this is exactly what's happening with Canada under Trudeau.
Right.
He even goes so far as to claim that he's been hesitant to provide, substantial military aid to Ukraine, especially compared to the U.S. and other NATO allies.
Yeah, it's true that Canada's contributions to Ukraine have been, let's say, more modest.
Okay.
However, we should remember that every nation's response is shaped by its own internal politics. Economic capacity, strategic priorities. It's not always as simple as just looking at the amount of aid given.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
This deep dive isn't about, pointing fingers or anything like that. It's about understanding the nuances of this situation.
Absolutely.
And boy, are there nuances.
It's messy, right?
It's really messy.
And what's fascinating here is how this goes beyond just, dollars and cents.
It really gets to the very heart of what it means to be a reliable ally on the world stage.
Because at the end of the day, NATO's strength isn't just about military might.
Right.
But a shared commitment to democracy, freedom, and collective security.
Big ideas.
Those are some big shoes to fill.
They are.
Yeah.
And that commitment, it requires more than just words on a page.
Right.
It demands action, investment, a willingness to, to stand side by side with your allies in good times and bad.
Wow. Talk about food for thought. This deep dive has given us so much to consider. Who knew defense budgets and international alliances could be so thought-provoking?
Right. It's often the less discussed aspects of global politics that, reveal these fascinating insights. It's not always about the headline-grabbing events.
Right.
Sometimes it's about understanding the subtle shifts in alliances, the commitments made behind closed doors, and the delicate balance of power being struck on the world stage. It's so true. It really makes you appreciate how complex and interconnected our world really is.
It is. It is.
Well, we'll leave you with this. As you follow global events, pay attention to those subtle cues, the decisions made out of the spotlight, and the unspoken agreements that really shape our world. Because sometimes the most important stories, they're hidden in plain sight.
That's a good point.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.